There's something about just being in nature that tends to remind us or create a field in which we have a remembering of things that are important to us. The ones who are most skeptical are the ones who, when they come back and we're sharing our experience, they are shaken by the power of what they just experienced. This is a moment where we often see copious tears running down the face, where we hear over and over again. I can't tell you how many people I've heard share a sentence that starts like this: "The tree told me."
This is Wild by Nature, stories of human connection to the wild. This is a podcast exploring how nature, ancient wisdom and lived experience guide us back to purpose, balance and belonging. I'm your host, Vian Sharif, and if you've ever felt the pull to slow down, reconnect and listen more closely to the world around you, you're in the right place. Hello and welcome to Wild by Nature. We've all been outside in nature, on a walk, a hike, or even just passing through. But most of the time, we're distracted. We're thinking, rushing, or moving too fast to really take too much in. So even when we're there, we're not actually fully present. Today's guest is Amos Clifford, a pioneer in guiding people into a deeper relationship with the natural world. He's the founder of the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy and author of Your Guide to Forest Bathing and Your Guide to Forest Bathing Journal, two resources that teach not just what forest bathing is, but how to truly experience it. And that really is just the tip of Amos's background. Welcome, Amos.
Thank you.
Amos, for people hearing this for the first time, what exactly is forest bathing and where did it come from?
Forest bathing is quite simple. It's just going into a forest or other natural environment in a way that's not hurried, where you leave your goals behind and you bathe your senses in the ambiance of the forest. So the attention in forest bathing is to sensory experience rather than a goal. I like to say it's more about being here than about getting there. The ways most of us typically go into the forest. And it came from Japan, the term forest bathing. It was coined in the 1980s. And the Japanese way of saying it is Shinrin-yoku. So Shinrin-yoku translates more or less as forest bathing, Shinrin being forest, yoku bathing. And it's come out of a need for addressing extreme chronic stress in the culture, particularly in the work environments. And so in Japan, the initial studies were, how do we gather evidence that spending relaxed time in the forest actually has beneficial impacts on levels of stress? So there's a lot of emphasis on evidence gathering. And that's true not just in Japan, but Korea has an amazing, in South Korea, a nationwide network of forest bathing or forest therapy bases that's really quite an infrastructure funded by their national lottery there. And I've been able to visit quite a few of those bases, and they have a very similar orientation, which is that forest therapy is for mostly for physical well-being from spending relaxed time in forest environments and with certain ancillary activities around that. So, for example, in South Korea, during a forest bathing walk, there may be a station where you go into a building and there's a pond, just a little, a shallow pond, just enough to take off your shoes and put your feet into it. and they'll have hot water in there infused with the herb mugwort, which they also use in China. So in China, they'll use very similar methods too. So these are some of the places where forest bathing have come from. But I'll also acknowledge in Germany, the nature spa tradition has been alive and well for hundreds of years. I want to say this is a global phenomenon. And I know you've spent some time in sub-Saharan Africa, and I bet you've witnessed this yourself among the people who you've spent time with there. Am I right?
I lived with the Samburu for a short period of time, and many of their lands are not a tremendous amount of forest, but a real reverence for the ritual of the day in relation to nature, as well as a huge amount of cosmology and ritual and tradition that grounds what the day looks like and what practices look like, Amos. And so, you're right. It's a phenomenal way to be connected to nature. And what I'm interested in is something you said right at the beginning of your answer there, which is collecting the information or data that is needed around what actually happens when you're forest bathing or having these experiences. And what has the data shown us happens?
So let's say we're at a forest therapy or forest bathing trail in Japan. I'm going to use for an example the trails at Okutama, which is a fairly short train ride out of Tokyo to get up into the mountains in Okutama. And at the beginning of the trail, there's a beautiful facility where you go in and they take a blood pressure and they measure salivary amylase. And what they're looking for are indicators of stress. So the amylase that they get just with a little swab in the mouth, it can be used as a fairly reliable indicator of stress level. So you do the walk, and then at the end, they've they've actually brought the same machines around to the building at the end so that you're using the same blood pressure monitor, the same salivary amylase. So they're trying to control for variations that might exist in the equipment. And they do a post measure. So you have the measure of stress indicators before the walk and after the walk. And typically, those measurements will show a reduction in stress after the walk. Now, I'm just going to say that for me, it's always the opposite. They show an increase, but I think that's because they're not measuring stress. I think they also measure engagement. And when I'm on those walks, I'm so engaged in noticing how the trails are built, how the guides are interacting with me and the other people walking on the trail, what the different kinds of activities or invitations are that they give. So I get very engaged with that. But for stress reduction in general, now they have probably hundreds of thousands of observations. And the trend is clear that for most people, the indicators are that there's a reduction in stress. So what's happening there is a reset of the nervous system. And when the nervous system is reset with less stress, it improves other indicators that are more complex to measure. For example, there's an increase in the natural killer cells, which are an important component of our immune systems. And so there's a boost in immune system health. And this boost from even just a weekend, say at a forest therapy retreat, is still detectable after a month. So they've established through this research that once a week, going out in the forest for a few hours is probably going to have a cumulative long-term benefits for stress, for immune response, and for there's a wide range of other health indicators they look at, including some psychological measures. They use a instrument called profile of mood states that looks at your mood before and after the walk. And there's improvements in things like, oh, feeling relaxed, capacity to concentrate, a sense of peacefulness, and so on.
Amos, that's fascinating to hear
Yeah.
these outputs really, and this links into something that you say that really stands out, which is the forest is the therapist. But before we tackle the forest as therapist, what does that make you?
A guide. So, a guide is a different way of working than being a therapist or a teacher. Guide suits me better. And I started my career as a guide when I was 18 years old and started working in wilderness programs for youth at risk and college students, the therapeutic wilderness model. So I started working in those over 50 years ago. And I worked in those for about, I don't know, maybe 20 years. And I noticed that for me, guiding just felt more natural.
I'm also interested, Amos, in your concept of invitations. How does that factor into either your guiding or the forest experience?
So an invitation is usually constructed to bring people to a different kind of state than is the norm for them. So a really simple example of that is I might at a certain point in the walk, I'll scaffold this with some previous invitations to get people ready for it. I'll say, now we're going to walk for 15 minutes. I just invite you to walk, and I'm going to set the pace. And the pace that I set will be much slower than you're used to. And I invite you to just stay with my pace, maybe stay behind me, or if we're walking through a meadow, just be aware of the pace and just stay at this pace. And I walk very, very slowly. Now, simply walking slowly through a meadow or a forest along a trail for 15 minutes is edgy for people. What comes up is the racing mind, what in meditation is called monkey mind, and a lot of thoughts about, well, this is stupid. I have other things to do, just preoccupations with other things. And I like to do these very slow walks for 15 to 20 minutes. And the reason I like to do that is because it gives the opportunity for the cycle of monkey mind to arise and fall away 3 times. And by the third time, there's a coming to a comfort, a sense of um, a sense of enjoyment of the very slow pace that we're doing. So what's happened there from the perspective of a guide is that the edge we brought people to is the norm in our society of always being in a hurry, being task oriented, having to do something. We brought them to that, and we've taken a little step beyond that. We said for just 15 minutes, we're going to just move slowly. And I'll usually give an invitation, another layer of the invitation. I'll say, as you're moving, pay attention to whatever is in motion in the landscape within and without. So when you find your mind racing, just bring it back to this question, what is in motion? And that's the equivalent of an objective meditation that you might get, say, in Zen or Vipassana trainings, something like that. I will say this, I don't tell them to meditate because, I practiced Zen for 20 plus years. And the first 10 years of that was I was so preoccupied with trying to do it right that I missed the point. I had my idea of what doing it right was. And my feeling is if we tell people we're going to do a slow walking meditation, people get preoccupied with trying to do it right. Invitation is not assignment. It's not an exercise. It isn't about doing it right. When I give the preface or the introductory talk to my walk, I say, I'm going to give you a series of invitations, and they are invitations. And if they don't work for you, don't do them or modify them. Think in your mind, well, what'll make it work? Explore, find your way.
Where do the edges that we put around ourselves come from? And why does this practice help us or invite us to go beyond those?
We're all in a constant co-conspiracy to create boundaries for each other and to enforce those boundaries. And there are major institutional parts of that, our educational system, the way our family systems work, our legal structures, our economic structures. What they what they all do is they create a kind of an ontological view that this way that we know the world is what reality is, and things outside of that are unreal or suspect in some way. And we're all experts at enforcing that. You know, when you think of school bullies look for the people who are a little bit weird, right? And those are the people who have not completely conformed. And so the job of the school bully is to get them to conform. They have the same job as the school principal. Get the kids who are out there a little bit to conform. They use different methods. But most of us eventually got absorbed. We got absorbed back into the dominant culture.
How does the forest bathing experience invite us to move beyond that into a different kind of experience or perhaps realization of self or connection?
Well, there's something about just being in nature that tends to remind us or create a field in which we have a remembering of things that are important to us. And it can be quite surprising. I remember one time I had a woman who lived down in Oakland call me and say, "Hey, I want to do a walk. I just want to do it by myself. Will you guide me?" Negotiated a time and a place, and I guided her for a few hours and contacted her a week later because I was curious. So, how did all that experience sit with you? And she said, it was exactly what I needed. I've made three decisions. I'm leaving my primary relationship. I've given notice at my job. I'm selling my house. I'm moving to another city. Now, I wouldn't say that the forest experience created those. They created the space for her to remember and to connect with those things that are important for her.
That's a profound example and perhaps leads us into a question around how does it work in an experience? And what I mean by that is it's very easy for us to walk in nature, go for a walk, go for a hike, and yet still feel disconnected in some way.
Yes.
How does this experience, or how does one actually reconnect on a sort of step by step
I
basis?
think this is why guides are important. Guides that we train know how to help people stay present and to remember. So, a series of invitations. Let's back up a little bit. Let's say you come on a walk with me. I hope you do sometime. And we spend 2 or 3 hours. We're going to go no more than a couple of kilometers. So we're not rushing around. We're not going to get there, but we are going to be here. With every step we take, we're going to be here. And during those 2 or 3 hours, we're going to pause and I'm going to give another invitation. And the invitation will always have something to do with sensory connection or with this kind of imaginal play that mobilizes the powers of our imagination in a way that keeps us really present. And every now and then we'll stop, and if we're with a group of people, we'll circle up and we'll take turns sharing in response to a very simple question. And that question is, what are you noticing? As we go along, we'll notice that there's a change in the quality of what people share in response to what are you noticing. There will be towards the end of the walk an invitation to sit spot. So that means the invitation is very simple. We say, find a place that your body enjoys and go and sit there for 20 minutes. I'll send out a coyote howl or a crow call or something to let you know when the 20 minutes are up. And during that 20 minutes, don't occupy yourself with reading or writing, and certainly don't be looking at your device. Just sit. That's all there is. Just sit. For some people at the beginning, that's difficult. But by the end of the 20 minutes, they don't want to come back. They want to stay there. There's something about just sitting that feels so right.
This leads me into perhaps some of the closing questions here that I wanted to ask. Based on some of the things you've said, Amos, one of the things that resonates here in this idea that perhaps you've been sitting for 20 minutes and you don't want to come back, this idea of, are we creating a relationship with nature in that moment or in that experience? And could you talk to us a little bit more about that idea of reciprocity and relationship? Is it present in these experiences?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked about that. We actually call the form we do with my company, the Academy of Nature and Forest Therapies, we call our form relational forest therapy. And one of our anchoring mottos is this: all medicine is relational. Without relationship, the impacts aren't there. And so if you repeatedly walk on a trail, over time you start naturally developing a sense of relationship with that because you become intimate with that trail. But we have invitations that very specifically cultivate relationship. I'll give you an example of one that you could probably just go out and do, but it's best if it's scaffolded with a few other invitations first. This is an invitation that I first tried when I was guiding a group on Mother's Day here in the United States, and I noticed these beautiful flowers growing up. The stems were growing up about 3 feet or so, and beautiful flower on top. And I thought, I'm going to call my mother. So I got the flower and I spoke into it, and I was speaking to the earth. Hello, mother. How are you doing? I'm so happy to be here with you today. So I'm doing that. So this is very imaginal, right? Then I tilt my ears. I listen to the flower. Now, this is a kind of flowering or of listening to the flower that is done not with the ear. You enact that, but you're listening with the whole of your being, with the receptive mode of your imagination. And you notice what comes, what impressions come. And it may be words, or it may be images, or it may be feelings, it may be any number of things. But that transaction of speaking and listening and holding the intention to communicate is one of the entries into authentic relationship. Now, I have a relationship not just with that flower, but I've deepened my relationship through its roots, through its presence with that forest, with the bioregion, with my own heart, my own being, my own intention, desire to be connected. And it supported me in that. So the flower is being seen, and its medicine is being called out and appreciated by my need to connect. And I'm being seen, and my medicine is being called out by the generosity of the flower. That's the reciprocity, or one dimension of the reciprocity. The reciprocity questions is one that I could, again, go on for quite a while, but I'm really glad that you asked it. Another thing that invitation that we give frequently is we're in a forest, find the tree that is calling to you, introduce yourself, have a conversation. Perhaps there's something you've never told anyone. Perhaps you're carrying a big question. Perhaps you have a sorrow or a joy that you would like to share. Then make it a conversation. Don't just talk at the tree. Listen with the whole of your being.
What I was prompted to ask you, how often do we do this with people who we really love? How often are we enabled to do this? Secondly, isn't it interesting how an experience like this might actually change our idea of how we relate to everything around us, including nature and other human beings? But also, finally, I wondered, do some people find this difficult in the beginning yes.
Yes, many people do. You know, they wonder what kind of woo-woo hippie stuff this is. But I have to say this, I have people who are pretty hardcore scientists come on my walk sometimes, and they tend to be very skeptical if I'm suggesting that they go and have a conversation with the tree. I'll try to soften the invitation and say, just be playful about it. Use your playful imagination. Just go do this. The ones who are most skeptical are the ones who, when they come back and we're sharing our experience, they are shaken by the power of what they just experienced. This is a moment where we often see copious tears running down the face, where we hear over and over again. I can't tell you how many people I've heard share a sentence that starts like this: the tree told me. And I'm really curious about that. What does that mean? The tree told you. And so I would say for the last 10 or 12 years, I've been on a deep inquiry about this and have developed quite a comprehensive, I think, perspective and system for understanding what's going on epistemologically for someone to have this experience of the tree told them, or the stone told them, or the creek whispered to me, or the clouds showed me. These are, in my view, these are reports of relationship existing. And you're right, the edges of relationship into, say, having this kind of exchange with the tree where we're listening with the whole of our being, they are somewhat generalized into other relationships with other human beings.
Amos, this has been an absolute gem of a conversation for me. I also think there should be a part two. Perhaps I could invite you to do that on site in a beautiful natural environment the next time you're here in the United Kingdom. And for now, I hope you will. I hope you will accept my invitation to you. And I also want to say you've given people a way not just to understand nature, but also to actually connect with it in not only the practice of what you do, but what you've written. So I want to thank you and to thank you for showing us that we can afford to slow down because that relationship that we develop is priceless in many ways. So thank you, Amos.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for mentioning what I've written. I didn't plug my book at all during this, but I will mention that a new companion book is out. My book is called Your Guide to Forest Bathing, and the companion is a journaling book that has invitations for journaling while you're out in nature. And journaling is itself a very powerful form of moving beyond edges and deepening relationships.
I was going to ask you, Amos, where can people find the books?
Yeah, certainly the English language version is available on any of the major online booksellers. Your Guide to Forest Bathing is now in 22 languages.
Absolutely, Amos. Thank you so much, and we'll be sure to put all of those links in the show notes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It's really been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you over there in the UK sometime.
Thank you for listening to Wild by Nature. If today's conversation sparked reflection, grounded you, or reminded you of what matters, take a moment to stay connected. Follow Wild by Nature on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts, and join me as we continue exploring what it means to live in relationship with the earth and with each other. We'll see you next time.
Resonate.